Hello guys, welcome to today's video, and in this video we'll be doing a in-depth analysis on the popular OTK deck that has Agent, Yoimiya and Ayaka in it. Now this deck is extremely powerful once it's set up, and this particular deck is basically a deck from Tenten, so check out his video if you want another analysis on his end. But more or less it revolves around the same strategies. You can alter the deck how you want. There's different variations, such as instead of Agent people put Chongyun instead, and I'll be discussing why, but you can always change it. But in the end the deck involves abusing Melt and just killing your opponents in one turn, hence why OTK. Now I just want to break down this deck to make even beginners understand why this deck is good, and let's just start off with why each character is in it. So the first character is Yoimiya. Now Yoimiya is mainly used because of her burst, as it enables Ayaka to continuously proc Melt thanks to how her burst works. Now Yoimiya's burst costs 2 energy and 3 dice. It does 3 pyro damage and creates an Aurora's Blaze that lasts for 2 rounds. Now the key thing is 2 rounds, so we'll get into why that's important, but basically what it does is it applies pyro after an elemental reaction occurs. So this includes Vaporize, Overloaded and Burning, and most importantly Melt. Now basically we make it use of this by continuously proccing Melt, as once we do the Melt reaction it puts a pyro aura on the enemy and basically allows Ayaka to initiate Melt again. Secondly, let's talk about the main DPS, Ayaka. Now, Ayaka has a very useful passive called Kamisato Art Senho, which allows you to get Cryo Infusion once you switch from a character to her. Now, this Cryo Infusion lasts for 1 round, and until the round ends, you get to use that Cryo Infusion. Now, an important thing to note is if you have her ult up for Ayaka's ult, you don't really want to use it, since it costs 3 dice and its effect lasts for a couple durations, but it's during the end phase where it procs. And since we want to do most of our damage in 1 turn, we usually don't use this attack unless we know Ayaka's about to die and we have a healthy Agent or Yoimiya, so we can make use of that cryo. But we'll be talking a little bit more about why Ayaka is used a bit later. But that's the general gist. Ayaka, we use Ayaka mainly for her normal attack and her passive skill. Now next is Pyro Agent, and he's here for multiple reasons, and one of the reasons is because the Yoimiya plus Agent is Pyro Resonance, which is pretty important. Now like I said from the beginning, people sub in Agent for Chongyun instead to get Pyro Resonance. However, Pyro Agent has a bit more utility in my opinion than Chongyun, and people do argue that Chongyun has that Cryo Infusion just in case Ayaka dies because of his skill. However, it's like pretty telegraphic and it's pretty obvious when Chongyun's setting up to do normal attack, because it's not 1 turn, we need to wait 2 turns instead. Ayaka, you switch, it's the Cryo Infusion, unlike Chongyun where he needs to use his skill, then he can use normal attacks. It does last 2 turns, but in my opinion I think Agent's just better because of his passive. Now, before we talk about that, the Pyro Resonance allows us to put 2 dice of Elemental Resonance Woven Flames into our deck, and this is just a 1 card to 1 dice trade, which is pretty important because we want to maximize our dice usage in 1 turn. And also, but we could have also got Elemental Resonance Fervent Flames, however, it is a wasted slot, since if you have it before you set up, it's just a useless card. So we'd rather just use other cards and just sub it out for something else. And yeah, like I was saying, it's a wasted slot because if we have the dice up, we can still use it if we're not setting up. Let's just talk about Agent. Agent, able to OTK. He can do 10 damage straight up by himself if you need it. 2 normal attacks plus an elemental burst is 10 damage straight up. Because of his passive, his first attack is able to do +1, but you can also use his passive to tank, because it also takes -1 if he takes it. And he has 2 stacks when he starts, and it's called Stealth. Now Stealth, what it does is when he starts the game, he gets 2 stacks. If he does damage, he loses a stack. If he takes damage, he loses a stack. So basically, you only get one attack usage out of it, and the other one's defensive. So the first attack is you do 3 damage because +1. The opponent hits you, you lose your stack, but you take -1. And afterwards, you do 2 damage again. That's 5 damage. And then next turn, you ult them. So 3 + 2 + 5 from his burst, 10 damage. They're dead. Now, obviously, there's counterplay, but the option is always there, which is nice. Now, that is usually a 1v1 type of combo, not against NPCs, because NPCs don't really know when you're setting up, but a human would be like, oh yeah, this guy's trying to OTK this person, we can just switch out, sub out. But yeah, Agent's role in this deck is mainly as a tank, using stealth just to tank extra 2 damage, which effectively makes Agent have 12 HP at the start, and just lets you set up more support cards and more dice, and just makes it in your favor, so you can finally use your Yoimiya to burst and then switch to Ayaka. And Agent's also there for backup. Now, Agent is either used as a tank or as front-loaded damage because of how his stealth works. And yeah, like again, his stealth status makes him do +1 damage and take -1 damage, and he starts off with 2 stacks. And you can get more stacks if you use his skill, but you mainly don't want to use that. Now, those are the reasons why they're in the deck. Let's talk about the card synergies. So first off, talk about Gambler's. Now, Gambler's Earring costs only 1 dice. Could be any dice. If you kill your character, your opponent's character, you gain 2 Omni Element. Now, this effect has no limit, meaning that you can get up to 4 dice in 1 turn. Technically, you could get more if you kill the 3rd opponent, but you win the game, so that doesn't really matter. So you cost 1 dice. If you kill 2 of your opponent's characters, you get 4 Omni Elements. And with 4 Omni Elements, it just means you can do more attacks because you have more dice, and it's more flexible with that dice because it's Omni Element. So if Ayaka dies, for example, you can switch to Yoimiya, you still have that extra dice. Whereas if it's like Cryo dice, you can't really do much, or you have to tune with your cards. So yeah, just a no-brainer. With a OTK deck, getting more dice is just more better. So why won't you have this? The only problem is if you have this before when you're setting up, it won't be as useful because you won't be sweeping. But other than that, it's just a great card overall. Now next, we'll be talking about Chang the Ninth, which is the next card. He costs 0 dice to place, and when he gets 3 stacks of inspiration, you get to draw 2 cards. Now he gains a stack every time an elemental reaction or physical damage occurs. So it's basically just strategize but free and requires more setup. Basically, you put this down when you're sweeping, keep on proccing melt, and then you just gain more cards. You can use that for tuning or for activating the card effectively. Or you can just do it beforehand. It's just more cards, more better. Let's talk about the next card, which is Paramedic Transformer. It costs 2 unaligned dice or 2 random dice and requires 3 stacks for its effect to activate. It gains a stack anytime a skill is used and elemental damage is dealt. Now, this is a 2 for 3 trade, but do note that the 3 dice are completely random. You won't get 2 pyro dice and a cryo, it's all random. So you could get cryo, pyro, and dendro dice. And you'll be asking, why would I want 3 random dice? Well, that's because normal attacks used unaligned dice. And more unaligned dice is actually better, so you can spam more attacks. And like I said, with Gambler's Earring, we can use the Omni Element dice for the substitute for the main dice. And it just allows us to spam your normal attacks more, because your normal attack requires more unaligned dice rather than like a skill which uses 3 specific dice. Next is NRE, and this card, when you first place it, lets you draw food. Once per round, if you use a food card, you get to draw another food card. Now this card is important in order to cycle your cards and also to cycle your food. And one particular food is the reason why this deck is really good. Now the food card, we'll get right into it, is Minty Meat Rolls. It costs only 1 matching dice and allows the character who ate the food normal attack to cost 1 online element. The value you get out of this card is insane. Imagine you do 3 normal attacks with Ayaka in 1 round. Usually they'll cost 3, per normal attack, so 3 times 3 is 9 dice, or 3 cryo dice and 6 unaligned dice. Eating minty meat rolls reduces it to 2 times 3 because each attack is only 2 dice now, which is 6 dice or 3 cryo dice and 3 unaligned dice. And this effect lasts for 1 round, meaning that if you had infinite dice, you'll be proccing this effect and it has no limit, no turn limit. Now, let's talk about turn limit abusing, because we can use this turn limit abusing from minty meat rolls in conjunction with Ayaka's cryo infusion, because it lasts for 1 round, not specific turns. And the same with Yoimiya's burst, which also has no turn limit, just a round limit, meaning that you can abuse all these effects combined to do a crazy amount of damage. And minty meat rolls just keeps on giving you value, the same as every other ability I just said, to do massive amounts of damage while using a crazy amount of dice and being dice efficient. And you let you spam normal dice way more than you should have. To like sum it all up, this deck uses minty meat rolls, the food, Ayaka's infusion, and Yoimiya's burst to keep on doing melt damage while being dice efficient, incredibly dice efficient. And the other filler cards, I don't really need to talk about. Mona just lets you use Yoimiya's burst more quicker, and Libin just makes you get more dice, more cards. Paimon just lets you get the right dice. It's pretty self-explanatory. Other cards is the zero food. Why would you have minty meat rolls plus this card, which is the northern smoked chicken? Well, it's because sometimes you want to use normal attacks on your Yoimiya or maybe your agent, and it just gives you more options. Because we have NRE, we can get more food anyway, so why not? Just another option, you save more dice. Next is Lotus Flower Crisps. It's one of the best 1 dice foods. You could use Mondstadt hash browns, which heals your target for 2, but if you know your opponent's going to hit you, you just basically heal for 3. But that's like a whole lot of assumptions, but still it forces your opponent to do a move that they don't want to, or make their move they want to do less damage. So just let your character be more tanky. Now the Noel card, leave it to me. This deck, obviously, as I said, most decks actually you just want to switch characters. So there's no brainer. You want to not waste a turn, use this card. And the other card, Changing Chefs, you just save. It's basically saving 1 dice. You use 1 card when you switch a character. It's basically the Pyro dice, but less, more situational, but it's still a good card. To me, it's just you gain more an element and more cards, just let you cycle faster. And yeah, the other cards I'm going to talk about are mainly for PvP, so if you want to switch them out, you can. Send off, you can add more of these cards or remove it, because summons are really strong in PvP right now, so you might want to add more or less depending on your experience, but that's why it's here. And the same reason for I haven't lost yet. If your character dies, which will probably happen if you're 1v1ing, then you can use this. This gets you more dice and more energy, and that could be a game changer. And yeah, that's most of the cards. You can feel free to alter the deck. Like I said, you can bring Chongyun, or you can just experiment, switch out some cards. Maybe you don't think the chicken is good, the zero cost food, but I think the deck is fine as it is. Now, you could also use other decks for beating bosses that uses minty meat rolls. Examples is like, you can use someone with electro infusion such as Sino. However, he requires more setup because he needs 4 stacks of his passive. So that's why Ayaka is just a lot less restrictive than a lot of the characters that can abuse minty meat rolls. Alright, so now this deck basically guarantees a win. I can single target, especially Oceanid. Oceanid, Terrace Room, you should be fine against them. You might have a little bit more struggle against characters like Maho Genki, but yeah, you should be fine. This deck is great in PvP and still is very strong against NPCs. And in fact, NPCs should be easier because they don't know about this abusing of dice. Anyway, I hope you've found something helpful from this video, and if you want me to change anything, do more analysis on other decks, feel free to put it in the comments section below. And yeah, that's about it. See ya.